Hey, AP Gov guys, Walswear here. Now, where we left off, we were talking about interest groups, uh, economics, economic interest groups, interest groups that are looking out for the economic well-being of their constituency, or that's it. The AARP, the American Association of Retired Persons, although that's a group that promotes causes as well, but the AARP is very active in the area of like Social Security and Medicare, because politicians occasionally talk about eliminating those entitlement programs. And when we say entitlement program, that means it's a program that the people paid into. So when you get your first job, you'll notice that there's a lot of taxes taken out. Now, if it's me, I'm gonna get this light a little lower because I'm gross. There we go. I'm just gross in general. I've been working with my little man this morning, getting him through his online school. His teacher's doing an amazing job. And then I went and got a ride in, thinking about what I was going to talk about with you guys. And so here I am, gross and snotty but fit. Man, I'm not buff, but I'm skinny. So anyway, getting back to the whole like AARP, and is this they are so active in these entitlement program issues politically. But anyway, what an entitlement program, just to kind of tell you, is a program that you've paid into. You've paid into Social Security, you've paid into Medicare. That's in every one of your checks when you work. Me, sort of a libertarian, I don't believe that the government should be handling my money, investing it. I think they're worthless at pretty much everything they do. And I think we can kind of see that right now. Mr. Libertarian Kook, I think what we're seeing right now is exactly what Mr. Libertarian Kook has been saying about the government forever. Now, for the record, that's a bias. That is me, not your. That's me personally, not me, your AP Gov teacher. Don't, like I said, it's personal opinion. Anyway, guys, so entitlement programs are programs that you pay into, and the AARP is very political when it comes to entitlement programs. They want to make sure that their people are going to get the entitlements that they've paid into. So that is an economic interest. But I would actually say that the American Association of Retirement Persons is probably a causal group. It promotes the cause of elderly Americans like myself. And what are the cause of like elderly Americans? Well, you name it. I mean, I don't know, handicapped parking spaces, or no, that's Americans with disabilities. I don't know I really don't know what a cause is for an old person, and I'm an old person, but I don't know what those causes are. So the economic interest groups we associate with economic interest groups, and when I shouldn't have just pulled AARP. AFL-CIO, which is the Teamsters Union, the American Medical Association, the National Farmers Union, American National Education Association. Those are your economic interest groups. Your promote causes. National Rifle Association is probably the most well-known causal interest group. American Civil Liberties Union, Veterans of Foreign Wars, there's a bunch of them. I'm going to say AARP. Now, public interest groups are They're a little different. The only one I can really think of is like Mothers Against Drunk Driving. I could probably think of a couple. Mothers Against Drunk Driving. Well, let's just use Mothers Against Drunk Driving. Okay, this is a public interest group. So they have on what's in economics a term called negative externalities. One of the negative externalities of driving is it results in death in some cases. Now, when you take alcohol and you add that to driving, which is completely illegal, the prospect of death goes up incrementally. Mothers Against Drunk Driving has been at the forefront of this since the 70s, I believe. And they are constantly pushing, and in this case, it's a solid agenda. It does run into some, their agenda is a solid agenda. You don't want people driving drunk. I think that nobody would argue that that's a bad agenda. How the agenda gets translated by the authorities is a little different than but like Mothers Against Drunk Driving is pretty hardcore, and things like roadblocks to test if you are sober, that we get into a little bit of a constitutional quagmire there, because at that point you're in a situation where you have to prove your innocence, and that opens a door of exploitation, which the police have been more than willing to utilize at times. But it's one of those, the end somewhat justifies the means. We're getting drunk drivers off the road, and certainly since the 70s, those numbers, I think per capita, have declined pretty severely, and we have enabled our police to keep people off the road. So that's an example of a public interest group. Now, this brings us to like the actual art of lobbying, and political action committees. Now, this is what you hear a lot of, and when typically you hear lobby as a negative term, because lobbying is attempting to influence policymakers, and the part that you really don't hear, you hear, well, a lobbyist is buying up Washington, and that's not necessarily untrue. In the past, there were some pretty nefarious things that were occurring with lobbyists. 1995, we pass a bill called the Lobbying Disclosure Act that mandates that lobbyists disclose everything about what their intent is and the money involved, and all gets rid of the veil of sort of secrecy. We have a lot of things that are disclosure based that you might have run into in your last assignment. The Federal Election Campaign Act of 71 is about disclosure in elections. In 2002, and I believe it's an extension of the Federal Election Campaign Act, we have a Campaign Reform Act, and these are Federal Election Campaign Act is disclosure. Where are you getting your money from? And then 2000, the Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act again gets down to where can you take money? Okay? And this brings us to, this question of how is it okay that a lobbyist can in any way direct money towards someone in politics? Well, it has gotten much more difficult. Now, there are tried and true processes by which a lobbyist gets money to politicians. One is they host quote unquote informative conventions in exotic places. Your whole family gets a freaking trip to, the Cayman, to listen to some, some data about a given topic, and the reality of it is you're just kind of hanging out. But lobbyists aren't, it's not necessarily a bad thing to be a lobbyist. Lobbyists often represent the perspective of the most important part of our country, the corporation. And look, you can have whatever kind of perspective you want on the corporation, but our politicians need to know the financial impact of the decisions that they make. And the financial impact is going to be felt by the corporations. The corporations employ the people. Most people are employed by a corporation. So, in many ways, a lobbyist's job is to convey to the politicians, hey, look, man, I work for Philip Morris, tobacco. And if you pass this X legislation, we're going to go bankrupt. If you raise the smoking age to 40, we're going to go bankrupt. And, and people are going to go out of business because they're going to sell to someone that's 35. So, America's founded on, the Bill of Rights, and the lobbyist is an important part of that, because the individual in society has a job, and the job is with a corporation, and the lobbyist needs to let politicians know that the people of their community. So if you're in North Carolina, you better be taking care of the tobacco industry. Virginia, I think there's some in Virginia too. Your job is to take care of the tobacco industry. If an adult wants to smoke, that's fine. That's why the age is 21. But these corporations are corporations that employ quite a few people. So you can directly lobby. You have a personal contact, and you go to that person and you say, hey, look, here's what our perspective is. Maybe you sit down with an administrative assistant, which is a pretty high-ranking, used to be when I was a kid anyway, position within within Washington. The administrative assistant is sort of the right hand of the House rep or the senator. And you can sit down with that person, give them your perspective. You can share data with them. Now, lobbying doesn't have to be directly to a politician. You can have like grassroots types of lobbying in which you have you and your people are just sending tons of letters to try and make all politicians aware of a given issue. Maybe it's lead in the water supply, or it's an environmental concern. Then it's a grassroots situation where you're trying to get it together. You can also, as lobbyists, and grassroots is everybody, these people come to your door and they're like, sign this, or mail this. That's sort of a grassroots lobby around a given issue. Very important part of our political process, because the people are able to directly contact via a lobbying entity, contact Washington. And it's nonpartisan. They are going to contact your representatives. They don't care if it's a Republican or a Democrat. They're going to contact your representatives. It's a grassroots lobby. You can also have a coalition of lobby. You can get like you get a couple groups that both stand to benefit. So let's use the water quality. So you get 5 or 6 environmental groups that normally one is deals with open space, and one deals with water rights, and you get all, and maybe they all get together and they say, look, we stand as one here that the water quality of the state of Colorado the integrity must be maintained, and we are standing together. So that's a coalition lobby. The lobby can litigate, can sue. The NAACP, famous for progressive National Association for the Advancement of Colored Persons. They litigate. If there's an issue, they litigate it, and they take it to court to see the inconsistency with our Constitution. NAACP is responsible for the civil rights movement by and large. And so that's a really important part of the lobbying process, the litigation part. And you can just there's another one that I'm forgetting, but I think we got the direct lobby, the grassroots, the litigation lobby. Those are sort of the big ones. Now, getting back to the money question, this brings us to the idea of special interest groups and political action committees. Now, a PAC, PAC, is what we call a political action committee. Okay? And a political action committee is a committee that is designed to funnel money into political ideology and interests that represent them. For example, you get a political action committee that is focused on keeping hard-line conservatives in power. Okay? What they will do is they create a committee, and the committee has to register, because all of the campaign finance stuff that has occurred that you probably came in contact with in the assignment I gave you, if you've done the assignment, it all has to go through God, hold on, let me get a little water here. A political action a political action committee, because of the prospect of, this is soft money. This is money that's just kind of goes where it goes. We got to try and keep tabs. So all these political action committees and interest groups have to register with Washington. Okay? They are the PACs are the political arms of interest groups, and they have to be registered with the federal government so we can watch them, because they raise money from multiple contributors and they donate to a multitude of candidates. So when you look at the political action committee, there's a lot of area there's ground for abuse there. How are they funneling the money? So one of the things, they are very well regulated from the 70s on, and $5,000 max to a candidate, $15,000 to a political party. They can give money to other political action committees, which is pretty common. But all of that is a means of influencing an election. And that's why PACs are and lobbyists are very and interest groups are very heavily uh, uh, regulated. We keep an eye on them to make sure that this soft money is we can keep track of. Now, one of the things that is important that I think you came upon is the notion of the all of the Citizens United cases versus the government. And the Citizens United cases are cases in which the Political Action Committee, Citizens United, that will sue the government for the right to give money to candidates and the right to give money to whoever they want, because this is a gray area. And so if you didn't do that Citizens United versus the United States, make sure you take a look at that. I don't know the specifics of the case. I know that they sued and won for the ability to give a certain amount of money to political parties and candidates. But take a look at that Citizens United. The next time we kind of sit down, I'll talk to you about the media and the role of media, which is getting really, it's almost as if media on the right and left is an interest group. I look at Fox as an interest group, and I look at CNN as interest groups. You know, it's like, what? When did this happen? Most of my news I get from Bloomberg, because financial news is the only news I care about. Bloomberg, I like The Economist a lot. They try to keep things pretty, non-biased. But when in all fairness, I'm not in any way getting Trump's side here, but for sure, our media is not bipartisan right now. An entire sector of the country is getting news from the left, and an entire half the country is getting news from the right. That's fact. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it next on Wednesday. I'll run some stuff by you. Anyway, get your assignments from last weekend. I'm not going to put an assignment in now. I will give you an assignment on Wednesday. Get your assignment from last weekend, which was going through the origin of regulation of interest groups. I'll see you. Take care of yourselves. Sorry to ramble on, but man, it is what it is. I love you. Be strong.